Welcome to the Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm here with Justin Bingham, who's the co-founder and CEO of Opiniion.
What's up, everybody?
How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So Opinion with two I's, right?
Yes. Trust me, we've tried to get the actual opinion.com, but to no avail. The gentleman, Scottsdale, if you're listening, please sell it to me. He doesn't want to relinquish it. So for now, it is Opiniion.
Cool.
However, I'll be honest, though. I find myself writing emails asking people's, hey, what's your opinion on this? And I'll oftentimes spell it wrong. So I feel like we got a little something going there.
Yeah. Maybe in 100 years, that'll be the new way to
Maybe
spell
it will, yeah.
Because of you guys.
Yeah.
All right. So spelling aside, what does Opinion do?
It's a good question. So we are really dialed in and focused on collecting resident feedback. So we're pretty heavily focused on the multifamily space. So apartment buildings, from ownership groups to management companies that manage these properties, to collect consumer feedback, analyze that data, and spit out a report showing these management companies how they can ultimately improve resident experience and drive a higher occupancy rate and renewal rate for those properties.
Got it. So feedback could be dead squirrel in the pool to
anywhere from online reviews to more traditional surveys, if you will. I guess since there's Utah folk listening, I mean the best analogy sometimes is if Podium and Qualtrics had a one night stand and a child was a result of that, it could possibly be what Opinion is for the multifamily space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good analogy.
You can probably cut that one out if it doesn't fit, but yeah, that's a good analogy.
Like it fits.
Yeah.
All right. So multifamily, that involves empires as well as like kind of ma and pa folks that have a few, right?
We're definitely focused on unit count, management companies 5,000 and above unit count. That's not to say we have a couple clients that maybe have one or two properties that are 200 or 300 units, but our target market is kind of focusing on the larger clientele. The beauty about the space, however, is that you're getting enterprise type deals written really by SMB entities, because oftentimes these buildings, while managed by large entities, are owned by smaller entities. They're the ones really writing the checks.
Okay. So would that be like REITs or like
there's REITs in
equity?
there. Yeah, there's REITs in there. We target anywhere from REITs to fee management companies. So some big names here in Utah like AMC, Bridge.
And those probably started with like one unit at some point.
Yeah, and evolved. Yeah. It's in fact, Utah's home to some really cool multifamily companies. We got Entrada just up the hill, and but even just on the management side, Bridge is a massive company. Just went public.
Yeah.
AMC is one of the top 10 management companies in the country. Utah's got a good little hub for multifamily tech and management companies.
Yeah, and there's a lot that goes into managing, especially when the numbers get bigger, right? Number of units, and I assume they've got regulations and upkeep and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Not for the faint of heart. Cash flow is nice, but you got to earn it.
Yeah, you got to earn it. I think cash flow is a little bit better on the ownership side. The managers, they just take a percentage of rent, and so finding ways for them to drive that occupancy up is actually a huge value add. So
yeah, and occupancy overall across America, according to the headlines, I oftentimes don't read the stories, but pretty high, right?
Yeah, it's pretty high. Yeah, obviously with the pandemic, things like that, people kind of stayed put. So there wasn't a lot of turnover. However, that's starting to shift and change as we're hopefully coming out of that a little bit. But yeah, ideally pretty high. And our data shows that obviously from a reputation standpoint, if we're talking reviews and things like that, naturally, if you think about it, the higher that you look online, the more attention that is going to gather you from prospective residents who will hopefully ideally come to your property and eventually sign a lease. So, the better you look, the higher that occupancy also is. That's the correlation we found between the two.
Yeah. And so somebody's sitting there and they're like, I wish we were at 95, 100% occupancy, or at 80. Wonder what's out there to help with that. Opinion, right?
Opinion, yeah. Beyond obviously that, and gathering more just feedback in general to drive a better resident experience. We are definitely a tool that can help you improve your occupancy rates. We can predict your renewal rates as well. So giving you kind of insight into the future. If you've got 90 days, you got a lease that's set to expire within 90 days, we can predict based upon analytics and survey results that we've gathered hey, here's a probability of renewals. And if that generally drops below 12% that are not going to renew, it's a little bit of a red flag. That puts you at a lower occupancy rate than you'd probably want. And so then they can use our software to dive into the information as to, okay, why are they not renewing, and how can we save, and who can we save to keep those people in their homes. So
got it. And where did this idea come from?
Man, it's a long story, but I'll make it short. So I've got 3 co-founders: Devin Shirtliff, Morgan Daly, Alex Bennett. It's funny, Devin's the common thread between all of us. They sat, I'm trying to think even the backstory, how long. I mean, the multifamily thing is totally out of the box. But as far as Opinion goes, Morgan was working at Dealer Socket at the time, had a client that said, hey, I'd love to figure out a way to collect better feedback and also push some reviews. And anyway, he called Devin and said, hey, Devin, this is a cool idea. I think we can figure something out. And Devin, being a very savvy guy, and generally when he's got an idea, he runs with it. So he ran with it and came with a product, very, very simple, bare bones product that was not targeted towards any particular industry, and kind of whipped it out. And we had a couple people sign up. And anyway, about 6 months after the fact, I jumped onto the team more officially and said, hey, this is a cool product. I knew some of the CEOs that were using the product at the time, and they swore by it. And anyway, so, it was perfect product market fit is the way I like to put it. I've been a part of some really cool companies. I've seen a lot of cool companies. Some are great product market fits. Others are more kind of a square peg, round hole scenario. Yeah. This was just perfect. And so we jumped kind of full head in. And as far as the multifamily side goes, it's really through just wanting to be vertical experts, not wanting to be this broad, applicable software to so many different industries, where I felt like the technology stack or the technology that's available was just so shallow. If you're focused so many places, how can you offer really direction over information to these businesses? And that's really what we wanted to be. We wanted to be a business that offered you direction on how to improve, give you action items, not just, hey, here's some information, digest what you will. And so we decided to be vertical experts, go a mile deep and an inch wide versus a mile wide and an inch deep. So we started to pinpoint a couple of different verticals of our interest. We have a slew of clients when we first started out, and we still have some of those clients, and we still take care of them. We love them, but it evolved eventually into a couple connections that led us to multifamily, and here we are today having almost 600,000 units that we service now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. So it's kind of like taking your Ford Mustang into a authorized like Ford mechanic. That's all he does versus just the general mechanic.
Totally. Yeah. And that's one of the advantages we have against some of our competitors in the space is they're very broadly applicable to so many different industries. And as a result, they miss some of the skills and some of the data that we're able to collect that are very specific to multifamily.
Yeah. All right. So that's the product. I'm always interested in, I guess, iterations, right? The big iteration was multifamily, but how do you guys tweak and improve the product?
Product is a huge focus of ours. So we just went through another round of funding. We got great investors. They're incredible, actually, and they're big supporters of what we're doing. And product has been a huge focus of ours because I believe if you build a world-class product, sales come. Now, that being said, I'm a sales-focused CEO, and so we are always constantly focusing on sales parallel to trying to improve the product. So product right now is again, a big focus. Here's some of the really big areas for us, which I'm happy to say is just reporting. We gather a lot of data and connecting more dots and coming out with more reports, finding more correlations for our clients. And again, being more truly that vein of direction where they lean on us as the experts, not the other way around. It's not us offering up information, them coming up with conclusions. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. It's the other way around. They buy opinion knowing that we will become their experts and helping them see what they need to do to better their overall management skills. So I would say reporting is a huge emphasis of ours right now. The product's dialed in. It's a great product, works incredibly well. But where we would like to see better improvement is just that more direction piece through reporting. And then on top of that, multifamily is our main vertical. It's not the only vertical we're focused on, or at least, we've got a future focus on other verticals as well. In multifamily, you've got a trend that, let's say, for example, you got a 250 unit apartment building. And they'll dedicate, let's say, 10 units to what they call short-term rentals. They'll list them on Airbnb, hotels.com, and they're already part of the apartment complex. We're already servicing them anyway. And but it's becoming a very popular trend where, again, these management companies or ownership groups are finding that they can maximize the properties that they own by putting a handful of these properties out to more short-term rentals. So we're dabbling in that space right now. It's really interesting because it opens up a whole new vertical for us, which is really hospitality.
Yeah.
Venturing into actual Airbnbs or things of that nature, but also even just going into the hotel space. And so that's really exciting for us to be able to look at that because, again, you look at the hotel space and they're still very archaic. I mean, when you check out of a hotel, they ask you how your experience was a week after you check out. And so, there's a lot of improvements to be done in that space as well. So anyway, product a little focused distantly on that as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So feedback's kind of an important part of the entire company. And
yeah. So, I'd say it's a huge part of it. And it's kind of the main part of it is collecting and analyzing consumer feedback. And we do that, again, through a series of methods, and reuse is a component of that.
Got it.
Yeah.
And as far as you mentioned kind of a CEO focus on sales.
Yeah.
What is the sales process like now versus in the early days?
Oh, man, it's funny. So we just went to a big event in Chicago 2 weeks ago. And one of my co-founders, Alex, was there. He's our CRO. And it was funny. I had to call him. I said, Alex, what booth number are we? It's because Alex and I were so used to actually being the ones that set up the trade shows. We'd bring the banners. We would do everything. We'd have to sit in the hallways and, have to, convince people to come into our booth, half flirt with girls so they would just stop and listen to our pitch.
Sure.
I mean, we're just talking like anything we could to actually get people to talk to us. And we went to this event and sat back and just watched our team as the booth just flooded with people. And so it was an interesting dynamic to kind of sit back and be like, people know who we are. Wow, people want the product. And wow, the team is executing really, really well. And so it was kind of cool to sit back and have that experience to where Alex and I were doing a lot of selling in the early days. In fact, we did all the selling in the early days. And it's transitioned to now of having a full-blown sales team with a sales leader. But I still find myself involved with all of our key clients, the ones that are big kind of name deals. We have a group of investors that have also created a network for us to sell to really some of the industry's biggest names in multifamily because they're investors in this venture group, therefore kind of indirectly investors in us. And so I usually am involved in all of those. I like to have my thumb on in most of the deals. It's kind of fun just to be a part of it and continue to pitch it. Keeps me sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if all goes well and you make the sell, onboarding then, right?
Pretty simple. I mean, we've got great partnerships in the space. We're fully integrated with, Entrada. They're a great company, great partners. We're fully integrated with Yardi. I realize that's their competitor. RealPage. And so we've got a lot of partnerships, which we pay a lot of money for to have access to their APIs. But as a result, it creates our target market to be completely identified. We know without a shadow of a doubt that we can service 90% of the conventional multifamily industry. That's huge. So as far as sales targets go, we always know who to reach out to. And then that being the case, because we've got those integrations, onboarding is pretty simple. We generally tell people, hey, within 14 days, we can have you fully onboarded and ready to go. A lot of that accounts for them scheduling times with their on-site managers to jump on and do a training, but pretty seamless.
Got it. And you mentioned fundraising.
Yep.
What are your overall thoughts on that process? What did you learn? What could you advise others that might go through it in the near future?
Good question, man. I will tell you, I have not had the typical entrepreneur fundraising experience, which is a grind, and it's annoying and it's time consuming. I have been fortunate to not have to really experience that. And part of it's probably chalked up to my history, knowing, I've started a couple companies and I've exited a couple, or I call them my base hits. And fundraising was really hard. It was that typical entrepreneurial experience where you're grinding. I'm showing up to people's offices in San Francisco unannounced, pretending I have an appointment. And, I've done all that. This time around was a little different. I kind of told the team, I say, hey guys, we are going to focus on revenue. Let's bootstrap as long as we can and get to the point where, we dictate the terms. People want to invest in us. They come to us. And that really has been the case. Even with starting with the very first round we raised was through a series of connections, and it just was a good fit. And then from then on out has been easy is not the right term, but it has just, we found really good alliances that have wanted to be a part of what we're doing. And so today you look at our cap table, we've got RET Ventures, which is an incredible group, $150 million fund, I guess fund $250 million. We've got the Fraser Group, very well known here in Utah. We've got Tamarack Capital, well known here in Utah. We've got AIM Ventura Capital, run by Greg Cole, very well known here in Utah. And so we've got a lot of really, really good investors. And again, it has not been a strenuous process. So in terms of advice, I would just say, focus on building a business that's worth investing in, and then try to find people that add value outside of a wallet. And that's what we've been able to do. And we've been fortunate.
Yeah. Well, you can see both sides. You went through the grind, and then this go around, it was a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
All right. So once you've got the investors, get to or have to interact with them after the fact, right? So how does that work for you and your team, and updates or board meetings? How does that work?
Just had our board meeting yesterday. We have them quarterly. I will tell you, board meetings for us are more of a formality because I am talking to these investors monthly, some of them weekly. We've got a good relationship, a good bond. Candidly, I go golfing with a lot of them now.
Yeah.
I'm not even a golfer. So good relationship with a lot of them. And so I would say that having that open dialogue has made it easier to have tough conversations when we need to have them. Yeah.
All right. Because sometimes, I'll ask my kids, how was school today? Right. And they're like, it was great. Fine. And sometimes I envision investors calling entrepreneurs and be like, how's it going this week? Right.
Yeah.
Or is it like,
none of ours do that. None of ours do that. And I think it's because we talk to them so much. Our board meetings are less reports and more about, hey, what can we do to better the business? And that's really what a board meeting should be. It should be way less reporting and more, hey, what can we do to better the business? What does the business need? Because at the end of the day, if you think about just the nature of investors and entrepreneurs, it's, they're buying a piece of your company. They're invested in your success.
Yeah.
Too often, I think sometimes investors, have the mentality of, CEO works for me. It's more of a partnership than it is an employment status. So yeah.
So with the board meetings being more of working board meetings, what should the company do? Where should the company go? Does everyone crack open their computer and check oh, I know that person, I can ping them?
Definitely a lot of jumping into networking. In fact, just yesterday we were going through our Q4 pipeline, David Fraser pipes in. He's like, "Wait a minute, I know those guys. We invested in those guys."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, perfect. Tell them to buy Opiniion." And so, it's definitely a lot of leveraging your network and just talking through problems. And again, a lot of our guys are industry experts. They've been in multifamily. I mean, Greg Cole was the CFO of Conservice, which sold to TA for $800 million.
Yeah.
Guy knows his stuff when it comes to multifamily, right? John Helm runs RET Ventures. Has sold 2 companies to RealPage. He knows his stuff. And so, we talk about industry problems and how we can help solve them.
Yeah. And so for you as the CEO, what do you look at daily or weekly to know that you're still pointed in the right direction and that you've got a game plan for the next month or the next week? What is your dashboard, I guess?
So we have a leadership meeting every morning, 15 minutes, 9:45 to 10 o'clock. It's that's just the culture at Opiniion. So we have those, always making sure that we're communicating with each other from a department, leadership department standpoint to make sure everyone's on the same page. And then every 2 weeks we have a full-blown leadership meeting where we really jump into, the constraints of the business. A good friend of mine, David Blake, who was the founder and CEO of Degreed, led by managing against the constraints. I completely agree with how that management skill was. And we're similar where we want to manage against our constraints. And so we talk about them and making sure that we're all on the right path and we are aligned. And so I think constant communication, sometimes I'm guilty of maybe over meeting. And so we've tried to reduce that a little bit. COVID helped with that. But yeah, we definitely are always in touch. And then obviously my connection with the investors, talking to them, telling them our vision, telling where we're going. And yeah.
And so in the early days, how did you guys land on a price?
Oh man, you want to know the funny story about this is we're sitting at a company down in Salt Lake City, Utah, and Dev and I are there. And through one of my connections, we got the intro. and they're an ownership group. They own 25 apartment buildings across the country. And we didn't know the dynamic of ownership versus fee manager yet. We had no idea. And we're sitting there, and we were told ahead of time that they like a price per unit. I'm like, well, that's strange. How the heck do you do that, right? Because we're so used to doing this kind of per location price. And so we're sitting there kind of like debating, and I'm like, dude, like, what do we do? So we were kind of like backing into the math, reversing the math, dividing over the average number of units we think they might have. We're very unprepared, obviously, for this meeting. And anyway, going there, we just kind of pitch a price per unit. He's like, yeah, that works. I'm like, sweet. So, after going out of that meeting, realizing, okay, we were probably a little lower than we should have been, right? And of course, that's changed over time. But that's really how we price it, is a per unit cost. And again, kind of an industry thing. To me, it's easier to charge per location, per property, but it's a per unit thing. So how we derived there is a little bit unique, but as we've added more products to our offering, that price has increased. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, at some point you have to decide, what are we going to sell this for? And
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say if anything, we're maybe guilty of being a little bit still on the economical side. But we have volume in our favor. We have a lot of units, to be in a short amount of time that we've really focused on multifamily, to have almost 600,000 units, pretty unique.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and so, now we can, obviously upsell people within our portfolio just by way of launching new products, which we've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned previously a couple of singles, which if you hit enough of those, you'll get in the Hall of Fame. What did you learn from those that you've applied to the current company, and what mistakes have you avoided?
Good question. The first single, I'll call it, I think the lesson there was, you got to have a clear-cut revenue model. Great business and fun business. And then, so I would say that's first principle is you got to find some sort of revenue model. Having a lot of followers works for some businesses. Unfortunately, has not worked for any of mine. And then obviously from that one, raising smart money. There is money out there, but like I said earlier, we have focused on trying to raise money that comes with something other than just a wallet, something that actually helps our cause, brings opportunity to help grow our business. Otherwise, it's just money, and money's not too hard to come by if you look long enough. So that's the first thing I would say is those two things. And then what was your other question on that?
I guess I'll rephrase it now. Have you made the same mistake all?
I'm sure I have. I'm sure I probably have. Trying to think mistake-wise. I'm a very impatient person. And so, one of the mistakes that we almost made at Opinion is not having an in-house tech team initially. We immediately fixed that very, very early on by hiring a CTO and really building out our team internally. The other businesses a lot of them one of them was a tech company, which we didn't even have a CTO. We were just building it with like some freelance dude, which is again why it was a single, maybe even a bunt that got me to the, but yeah, so, that's one thing that I think that, we were able to avoid and really focus on owning our tech versus having someone freelance it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is a lot to be said for a few battle scars and
totally
a memory of, I remember I did that.
Yeah.
Didn't go well.
Impatience, though, it's just, man, to me, it's like I always want it. I want it this way and I want it now. And sometimes it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. Just part of being a human, I guess.
Yep.
All right. So you mentioned a few exciting things, possibly some new verticals, but what's got you most excited about the near-term future of Opinion?
What we're doing in multifamily specifically is pretty cool. The correlations we're making, just the response we're getting. We have our product advisories. We have a product advisory board, which is made up of the VP of marketings of a lot of our clients. And so it's cool to get them in a room and talk about the future of the space as it relates to consumer feedback and really how important that is. If you look back 7 years ago, you've got companies like Orange Soda and some of these really cool companies that were doing a lot of SEO. Well, you look to today, the new form of SEO is consumer feedback. And, because we dabble in that in other areas, it's really cool to look at and say, okay, how can we use this to better a business's financial situation? And yeah, and so I would say that's knowing that I haven't accomplished yet what I want to accomplish is what is really exciting for me.
Awesome. Well, very fun. And I like hearing these stories where you've gone through it a few times and you've learned a lot. And congrats on the success. And
thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time to join. And we'll look forward to circling back again in a while and seeing how it all went.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you.